Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks to Ken Silverman of your staff, who I know has been putting in a lot of effort trying to pull everybody together the last few days. Thanks to Marlene Michelson. Thanks to Patty Vitale of my staff, who did a superb job defending my priorities. I really appreciate it. I've been through a lot of these budgets. I've been through more of them than anyone else here other than Nancy Florine. And what happens is the county executive gets his department heads together and they pull together a balanced budget that meets a lot of needs, and then the community reviews it, and the community brings to our attention that some urgent needs are missing. And we, in committee, make additional cuts, and we try to find efficiencies and eliminate redundancies. That's what budget oversight is about. But there are a lot of needs. It's a big metropolitan community, and the council adds some things back. And we have done that every year that I've been here. I can anticipate that some of those in the political environment who are advocating for more funding for pre-K and superb service delivery will criticize this council for adding to the executive's budget. And it's worth, I know no one will do this, just reading the charter, because this is how the process works. And it's how it's worked every year. And we've been quite prudent and moderate here. We maintained the reserve, we maintained OPEB, and we did not adopt everything on the reconciliation list. And there's a number of things that I wish we had, and I know every council member feels the same way. But the council president assembled his list, which met some of the most urgent needs and did not include some of the others. The only way that a council member can really advance his or her social policy goals if the executive doesn't include something in his budget is by having it added to the reconciliation list. And the voters empower us and entrust us to advance the social policy goals that we believe in strongly, and the results, as Ms. Novato had said in her excellent remarks, are going to be really important for early childhood learning and for healthcare and for a range of other topics and for public safety. And by far, just about half of what we've added here is in fire response times. And so I'm prepared for the criticism. I'm very accustomed to it. And I will ask the critics, which community do they think ought to have a slower response time for fire trucks and ambulances? Why don't they just spell it out and let that community know that safety just isn't a priority for those critics who, you know, we'll probably hear from them tonight. So that's all right. I want to thank my colleagues very, very much for their support of an innovative effort, the first effort in the United States at the county level to provide an add-on to the NIH Small Business Innovative Research Grants. There's been a lot of discussion about economic development strategy, and are we getting it right or are we getting it wrong? And if economic development strategy was easy, every community would be prosperous. And we are prosperous. We're very, very prosperous. But we're seeking ways to enhance and incentivize and send a message and indicate that we care and that we care about our core industry, which is the life sciences. That's the industry that is engaged in curing disease and alleviating suffering. It's an industry that is so consistent with our values and that does such good in the world. And so we're starting something new, and we're going to add grants to small startup companies that are breaking new ground and discovering ways to make people feel better and prevent premature death. So I think that's something we should be proud of. I'm also extremely appreciative, and I know this was very difficult, that we are going to launch a planning effort. We're going to take our time and do it thoughtfully to address the needs of homeless youth who are not currently being served. And I know that my colleagues took meetings with some formerly homeless youth recently. Those young men are being served, and I'm glad, and my office has worked with them. They're presently housed, and they've encountered very difficult circumstances in their lives. But we don't know the scope of the problem we have with homeless youth. We know that there are young people attending school who don't want their colleagues to know that they're homeless, and they aren't receiving services. And I absolutely believe in the principle that no decisions should be made about us without us. And I guarantee to my colleagues that the planning effort that we are getting underway will include input from homeless youth, absolutely. And homeless youth will be involved in the governance. It's entirely feasible, as in most other drop-in centers, that formerly homeless youth will be involved in the staffing. We've not made any firm decisions at all about any of this. We don't know where the center will be located. We don't know how it will be staffed. We don't know what hours will be maintained. So I know that my colleagues were approached with criticism of this effort, but I think the criticism assumed that decisions had been made when indeed they have not. And it will be an ongoing collaborative process to get started on something. I know the point was, and what is the something? There are young people today at Panera, at Starbucks, in the woods, imposing on their friends, staying with second-degree relatives for a week or two at a time. Their family situations have deteriorated, and in many cases, disproportionately so, they are members of the LGBTQ community who, when they expressed their gender identity, were rejected by their families and thrown out of their homes. And what the homeless youth drop-in center will be a safe place where people facing this crisis in their lives can interact, ideally with peers, as in the case of the 2 drop-in centers for youth in the District of Columbia, where Montgomery County youth are today getting served. And it'll be a casual, no-demand environment. If they need a shower, they can have a shower. If they want to get a bite to eat, they can get a bite to eat. If they want to do their laundry, they can do their laundry. If they aren't interested, as many young people are not, in being in a shelter arrangement with much older homeless people, which is not safe, then the goal would be that appropriate housing arrangements would be found. The suggestion that instead of doing a drop-in center, we ought to adhere to housing first principles, friends, I am the one who advanced housing first principles in this county. I'm deeply committed to housing first principles. I'm going to be wearing a cap and gown on Sunday and Monday. I'm receiving my doctorate. I wrote a dissertation on the topic of housing first. I'm deeply committed to it. And this drop-in center absolutely will be consistent with housing first principles. The goal will be to find people who are not getting services today and put them into a housing first model. So I really am very, very appreciative that despite some criticism of the concept, which I think missed the understanding of how early we are in the dialogue and how eager we are to have ongoing input into the dialogue, that we proceeded with this priority. I also want to speak to the proposal for a climate policy director, which I advanced, and the T&E committee will take up that legislation. The county executive has 4 special assistant positions and 4 assistant CAO positions in this base budget. And the history has been that each new county executive has filled those positions with, I'm going to say his because each county executive thus far has been his, people of choice. And whoever is the next county executive, she or he, will have that option. And it's already in the base budget. And so a special assistant or an assistant CAO absolutely could be the climate policy director, fully funded with support. And that's, and so this budget does provide the flexibility for the county executive to fill that role. And I just wanted to make that point. I know that every item that makes it onto the reconciliation list has a constituency behind it. That's why we propose them. I hope that there are more of my constituents who are pleased with our work than are disappointed by our work, but never, ever will 100% of people agree with anything that happens in public policy. But I think we've achieved a good balance here, and we've met a lot of really urgent needs. And again, I thank my colleagues for funding some of the proposals that I put forward. Again, there isn't any other way to advance public policy goals for a council member than to add them to the budget. And so that's what we've done in a very prudent and I think restrained manner.